Hey y'all, back with another lore compilation. Last time I said I was going to try to get back to weekly long-form uploads. Stuff happened last month that made that difficult to pull off, so I only got 2 uploaded counting last month's compilation video. I'm trying my best to get back to my normal schedule. I do work a full-time job in addition to YouTube, so sometimes it's just hard to keep the pace I want to. And I'm sorry y'all, I really want to make content for y'all as much as I can. Even when a video underperforms comparatively to my other stuff, the amount of people that watch it still blows my mind, and I'm eternally grateful to y'all. I always feel weird plugging my Patreon outside of the end screen where I thank y'all, but I was told some people don't even know I have one. But yes, I do have one over at patreon.com/8squid. If you want to support me directly outside of liking, commenting, and subscribing, that is a way to do it. I'm grateful for any amount given, even joining as a free member, I appreciate. Anyway, on with the compilation. This is a compilation of all my shorts from December of 2024. Dr. Elodie is a character who appears in the Archie Sonic comics and is Nicole's father. A skilled scientist when he found out his daughter Nikki was dying and would probably pass before Uncle Chuck could complete the roboticizer. In order to save her life, he developed the digitizer, a device that could copy and preserve her mind in the digital world. Unfortunately, while he did manage to copy some aspects of her, the process failed to capture her memories and personality. Having now created an advanced AI he had no purpose for, he gifted his creation to a young Princess Sally. When reuniting with Nicole years later, he's clearly uncomfortable around her and doesn't really recognize her own personhood. That is, until Sally chews him out about his behavior, leading him to recognize he hasn't been fair to his creation. Cassia the Pronghorn is a character who appears in the Archie Sonic comics. She and her sister Clove reluctantly enlisted as egg bosses, and in exchange for their servitude, Eggman offers to cure her of the disease that caused her to go blind and deaf, as well as giving her robotic eyes and ears to give her back her senses, now only having to take medicine to adjust to her cybernetics. She ends up facing off with Bunnie between issues 277 and 279, the two arguing over the nature of their alterations. Bunnie getting very clearly upset when it's implied her cybernetics are a good thing, and Cassia getting just as frustrated when Bunnie refers to her eyes and ears as a selfish upgrade. The two eventually put aside their differences, with Cassia essentially letting Bunnie leave with the Chaos Emerald. As it would turn out, Eggman lied. While he could restore her sight and hearing, he has no idea what's wrong with her. Her medicine actually keeping her condition from worsening. Her older sister chooses to withhold this information from her. Isabella Mongoose is a character who appears in the Archie Sonic comics and is Mina Mongoose's mother. Meeting her husband during the Great War, he passed sometime early on during Mina's life. Isabella would eventually be captured and roboticized, though once her free will was restored by the Sword of Acorns, she would resume taking care of her daughter. A long while after being de-roboticized, she would be elected to the Council of Acorns after Rotor had resigned, where she would be the one who would begin the successful motion to overturn Nicole's banishment. In the Archie Sonic comics, Sally was Knuckles' first friend. A long while before Robotnik's conquest, the two would meet as children when Sally's father paid a visit to the floating island. Sally would spot the echidna watching her from the bushes and confronted him. With Sally being royalty and Knuckles being next in line as the guardian, the two found they had a lot in common and became fast friends. Though they initially had to hide their friendship as it violated the rules of Knuckles' apprenticeship. The two would play with one another each time their fathers would meet, with the echidna even developing a small crush on the princess. Though Sally's visits would stop in the wake of Robotnik's takeover. Though the two would reunite years later, time caused the two to grow apart, with Sally beginning to question their friendship after Knuckles denied joining the Freedom Fighters. In issue 25 of the Archie Sonic X comics, Sonic faces off with an entire color spectrum of clones. Initially created by a shadowy organization in an attempt to turn the public against Sonic, they unfortunately couldn't get the color right. Regardless, the Sonic duplicates begin causing havoc around Station Square, only to be confronted by the genuine article. While Sonic initially completely outpaces his knockoffs, he begins to struggle when they prevent him from saving those in danger. Thankfully, his friends arrive to help, with Sonic then leading his doppelgangers to Eggman's base, using the Doctor to destroy them. Upon confronting his counterfeiters, Sonic's met with one more clone, one that happens to look like classic Sonic. The copy is then tricked into destroying all the other cloning pods, and is shortly after destroyed himself by mistake. In issues 173 and 174 of Archie Sonic, Team Sonic visits a Chao garden. After Rotor gets strange energy readings from the old Power Ring Grotto, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles go to investigate, only to discover that the area has become a Chao garden. Deciding to spend the day there, the three discover how Chao take on the traits of what they're exposed to, with one Chao, who Sonic decided to name Chronic, evolving into a Run Chao. Unfortunately, Eggman, having detected the same strange energy, arrives, and while he's disappointed there's nothing to steal, settles for causing destruction. The three, assisted by a few Chao, one of which Knuckles has nicknamed Chuckles, defend the garden. But while they do drive off the Doctor, the garden still ends up being destroyed, leading Sonic to relocate the Chao to the Lake of Rings closer to his home. Bunnie Rabot's dream is to become a hairdresser. As early as her first appearance in the Archie Sonic comics, the cyborg freedom fighter professes that her dream is to become Princess Sally's hairdresser, which probably is coming at the best time for the princess. Though they tell her to hold off on her plan until Robotnik's defeated, she does open a salon in Freedom Fighter HQ an issue later, where she shows off her questionable talents. While there are some later references to this, one of the more notable inclusions of this happens over a decade later in issue 177, where Sally asks Bunnie to cut her hair, returning the princess to an appearance closer to her classic design. Seems like Bunnie got better at it. This is when Eggman saved Lien-Da. At the end of the Iron Dominion arc, when Lien-Da and the Legion attempted to betray the Iron Queen, the Queen activated the bomb inside of Lien-Da's cybernetics, seemingly destroying her. However, rather than just let her pass, Eggman used his technology to rebuild her, even returning her to her proper appearance. Though she is much more cybernetic than before, and he did place a new explosive inside her. Lien-Da demands to know why Eggman saved her, when he's never been that kind before, to which he responds that it's all part of the game. He knows that everyone under him will attempt to betray him, but that they will also work the hardest to ensure they reap the biggest benefit once usurping the Doctor. Lien-Da accepts Eggman's explanation. In issue 21 of the Archie Sonic X comics, Sonic gets shrunk. Upon Chris's grandfather hearing about his old lab partner working on a device to travel across dimensions by shrinking to a subatomic level, Sonic and friends decide to pay him a visit. Unfortunately, Eggman too hears about this invention and plots to steal it. Sonic and Tails agree to test the device, but just as it's turned on, Eggman and his minions burst in, getting shrunk as well. Not to be deterred, Eggman decides to use the opportunity to end the duo once and for all, pursuing them into a toy store. After a fair amount of toy shenanigans and wrecking a portion of the store, all are returned to their original size, with the trio of villains landing in a dumpster and Chris's grandfather having to pay for all the toys that were damaged. Shadow returned to the Archie Sonic comics in a pretty unique way. While he had met a similar fate to what had happened in Sonic Adventure 2, how he survived is much different, being abducted by an alien species known as the Bem, who nursed him back to health. However, as an alien vessel belonging to another species known as the Zorda approached Mobius, the Bem gave Shadow enough energy to reach his super form so that he could attempt to repel the invaders. Unfortunately, the disoriented Shadow is no match for the alien's vessel, and is once again sent falling down towards the planet, this time crash landing right in Knothole Village. In the second Archie Sonic Mega Man crossover, we get to see the world of Okami. When our heroes split up to recruit help from across dimensions to battle Sigma, Princess Sally and Woodman end up happening across Amaterasu, already in battle with one of the Reploid Overlord's minions. Sensing the good in Sally and Woodman, the deity takes an immediate liking to the two, and she, along with her traveling companion Isun, agree to help against Sigma. While she is just one of many heroes present, the Celestial Brush turns out to be an invaluable tool in the fight, only faltering in direct confrontation with Sigma and the Genesis portals. In the future of the Archie Sonic comics, Silver was trained by Mammoth Mogul. The former villain, believing his own inaction to be partially responsible for the current state of the world, took it upon himself to both hone Silver's abilities and set him on a mission to identify and stop the traitor to the freedom fighters. While he seems to have turned over a new leaf, Silver's other teacher, Edmund, doesn't trust him. After multiple failed missions to the past, Mogul tells Silver that, to avoid altering their time in an unintended way, that he must remain in the past until he uncovers the traitor, temporarily stranding him there. While Silver would eventually succeed, the comic would reboot as soon as he did this. In issue 219 of the Archie Sonic comics, Sonic and Geoffrey compete for a Chaos Emerald. After being tasked by King Acorn to obtain a Chaos Emerald, Sonic and Geoffrey head to the Special Zone together. The Special Zone's guardian, Feist, still deeply angered by the previous visitors to the zone, demand that the two play his game by his rules in order to obtain the emerald. Geoffrey, in turn, suggests pitting him and Sonic against each other, an arrangement the deity agrees to, constructing an obstacle course. While Sonic immediately begins completing the challenge, Geoffrey hangs back. When Sonic returns with the emerald, he remarks that Geoffrey didn't even try, only to be hit by an electric dart. Geoffrey stealing the emerald and kicking the hedgehog into the void. You would think that would break Feist's rules, but the treachery entertains him. Geoffrey's true plan is later revealed to use the emerald to restore the mind of the villainous Naugus. This is when Bunnie was deroboticized. After the freedom fighter was accidentally turned to crystal, the recently crowned King Naugus vows to fix his mistake. However, rather than just removing the crystal from her cybernetic parts, he somehow deroboticizes her. While initially joyous, she has difficulties adjusting to the loss of her enhanced abilities, feeling weak. Antoine reassures her that her strength never came from her augmentations, but from who she is. However, when Antoine is injured and left in a coma, she blames herself for not being able to keep up in the fight, leading her to leave. The last we'd see of her pre-reboot would be her coming to her Uncle Beauregard, seemingly there to undergo the process of legionization to return to a partially robotic form. Captain Whisker, the antagonist of Sonic Rush Adventure, appears a few times in the comics. His first appearance is in issue 180 in a backup story that doubled as promotion for Sonic Rush Adventure. He would then have a follow-up appearance in Sonic Universe number 1 when Blaze recounts the events of the game, implying it all happened just off-panel. Post-reboot, he appears in the latter half of the Pirate Plunder Panic arc, where he unwittingly ends up in the conflict between Blaze and Captain Metal when he obtains the Soul Emerald they were fighting for. However, once Metal activates the Ego War, he and his crew make a strategic retreat. While he hasn't appeared in IDW, he was mentioned in the 2022 annual, it being said that he, along with his entire fleet, have disappeared. So we might not be seeing him for a while. This is Mina's nightmare. After the Iron Dominion arc, Mina finds herself plagued with nightmares about Nicole, as the Iron Queen had taken control of her during her invasion of Mobotropolis. Mina's boyfriend Ash encourages her to use this as inspiration to write a new song, one that turns out to be very anti-Nicole. What Mina didn't know is that Nicole actually regained control of herself rather shortly, and did everything she could to reduce the harm the Queen caused while the freedom fighters prepared to take the city back from her, Mina growing to dislike the effect her song had on the people of Mobotropolis. To make matters worse, Naugus and Geoffrey take advantage of the inadvertently radicalized population to begin Naugus's ascent to the throne. Aquarius is a Chao who appears in the Archie Sonic comics. This ancient Chao taught the people of Meropis the sacred rites that enabled them to form a shield around their underwater city. When our heroes first see her, she is undergoing the process of reincarnation. However, after the process takes much longer than usual, many believe something has gone wrong and that the Chao is not going to reincarnate. The stress from this causes the city's shield to falter, allowing the Dark Gaia creatures to enter. However, thanks to a little help from Tikal, Aquarius completes her reincarnation, transforming into an immortal angel Chao, allowing the city to be protected once more. This is how Sonic met Lupe post-reboot. When the freedom fighters arrive at the Wolfpack's village, they find it already completely desolated, with Lupe's father already having met his end. As Eggman's still present at the village, Sonic rushes off to confront him, while Sally attempts to console the grief-stricken Lupe. Knowing there's far too many badniks for them to fight alone, Sally attempts to convince Lupe to help. While she is initially resistant, still devastated at the loss of her father, Sally points out that she still has the rest of the Wolfpack to fight for, leading her to tearfully grab Antoine's sword and begin taking out the badniks. Unfortunately, aside from some brief cameos, this story would be the only time there'd be a focus on Lupe post-reboot. This is the Meropis royal family. In issue 261 of the Archie Sonic comics, we're introduced to King Puff and Queen Angelica, the leaders of the underwater city of Meropis. King Puff is a much more emotional leader, and being a pufferfish expands when he gets upset. While Angelica is much more even-tempered, she still acts very cold, stripping Coral the Beta of her position as priestess. Sonic doesn't care for them much. The pair do restore Coral to her position after she helps save the city. They do have a daughter, Princess Undina, but she's busy traveling at the moment. This is when Bunnie went undercover. At the beginning of the post-reboot, Bunnie was on a mission to infiltrate the Egg Army, but hadn't checked in a week, leading Sonic and Tails to assume she'd been captured and stage a rescue mission. In reality, she just went deeper undercover, as another member of Eggman's forces had become suspicious of her. When Sonic and Tails arrive though, this gives her the opportunity to break cover. Her mission was to obtain a shield generator for the Freedom Fighters, and luckily the Egg Army had just completed one for the Death Egg, and the team of 3 are successfully able to break into the research vault and get the generator. This is the time Sonic beat up Santa Claus. In issue 119 of Fleetway's Sonic the Comic, Sonic does battle with a Christmas kidnapper by the name of Vile Peter. While at first it appears the villain was able to escape, Father Christmas appears, revealing to have caught the kidnapper in his bag. Sonic, however, isn't buying that this is good old Saint Nick, believing it to be Robotnik in disguise. Grabbing Kris Kringle by his beard, he whips him around, tossing him into a pile of barrels, only to realize his mistake a moment later. Santa seems to take it well though, stating that the reason he dropped by was because Vile Peter is actually one of his elves who turned bad. Sonic is certain his behavior landed him on the naughty list, but Santa seems understanding. This is when Shadow fought Enerjak. In issue 182 of the Archie Sonic comics, the Enerjak-possessed Knuckles is terrorizing New Mobotropolis. Sent by Gun, Shadow arrives to help and lands one hit on his foe before being sent through a wall. The Ultimate Life Form responds by removing his inhibitor rings and hitting Enerjak with a Chaos Blast so large that both Sally and Eggman comment it could destroy the city. Shadow is once again knocked off his feet by Enerjak and attempts to fire a Chaos Spear at the deity, but as he has dominion over Chaos energy, he's able to swat it away and responds with an attack of his own. The battle ends when Shadow, along with everyone else in New Mobotropolis, attempts to rush Knuckles, resulting in him just freezing them in place, though Eggman arrives shortly after and captures the deity. This is when Shard met Sonic. In issues 245 and 246 of the Archie Sonic comics, Shard arrives to help Sonic, Tails, and Amy do battle with the Krudzu enhanced Metal Knuckles. However, the group ends up recognizing him as the original Metal Sonic and assume he was sent by Eggman. Only after the Krudzu attacks both Sonic and Shard do they begin to trust him. Sonic attempts to get some information about Shard's origin, but the most the rogue Metal Sonic will say is that Uncle Chuck was involved somehow. The group works together and ends up taking down their opponent. Afterwards, Shard suggests possibly using the Krudzu as a means to possibly deroboticize Sally. Sonic, now trusting his robotic doppelganger, allows him to take the piece of the Krudzu back to New Mobotropolis. This is when Team Dark met Feist. In issue 4 of Sonic Universe, Gun sends Shadow and Rouge to the Special Zone in order to collect a Chaos Emerald. However, upon arriving, they come face to face with the zone's guardian, Feist, who demands they complete a challenge in order to obtain their prize. The deity also disables Shadow's chaos control to ensure his entertainment. The two only narrowly fail, being kicked back to their own world. Shadow and Rouge return later with Omega, and once again undertake one of Feist's challenges. The three actually seem to complete it, but the Special Zone's Guardian doesn't seem keen on playing fair. Once again narrowly failing, the deity mocks them. However, Team Dark goes with their plan B, having Omega open fire on Feist while Shadow and Rouge use the opportunity to steal the emerald, and the team manages to teleport home before Feist can respond. The Foreman is a character who appears in the post-reboot Archie Sonic comics. Once in charge of the creation of the Death Egg's new shield generator, his life would take quite the unfortunate turn. Despite knowing there was a spy among their ranks, he was unable to find out who they were before she revealed herself and rendered him unconscious. And Eggman would not be forgiving of this failure. Not even taking the time to learn the name of the person he was punishing, Eggman activated a failsafe in his cybernetics, rendering him completely unable to move but aware of his surroundings, with Eggman planning to keep him this way for at least 50 years, locked in a tiny dark room, setting an example for all others who fail him. Eggman did change his mind, however, instead opting to give him to Maw the Thylacine to use as a test subject for an experimental new roboticizer, which, had the comic continued, would have probably resulted in him becoming the first victim of Archie's version of the Metal Virus. Sonic's collaborated with Monster Hunter a few times now, but one of the earliest instances was in the Archie Sonic comics. In the second Mega Man crossover, Styx and X end up in the world of Monster Hunter, happening across the X Hunters hanging out with some very familiar dressed felines. Before our heroes can throw down with their foes, a Gormagala arrives and devours the X-Hunters. X gets ready to fight it, but Styx, saying it's just like a puppy, manages to calm it down by baby talking to it. The now tamed Elder Dragon ends up taking part in the battle against Sigma's forces, and while it's effective at first, it's no match for Sigma himself, being rendered unconscious for the remainder of the fight. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to give a shout out to my patrons, and a special shout out to my $5 patrons, Ned Rex, Nate DM990, Diddly Do, and Queer Kaiju. See y'all in the next video.